Welcome back to another episode of Key Factors Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Jones, and this podcast is sponsored by ReviewMyMortgage.com, the largest index of mortgage programs nationally. And today we're going to be talking about a very fun topic, manufactured housing. And today I brought along a good friend, Christi Hines from Directions Home Loan, who specializes in manufactured housing. Christi, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. This should be fun. I think there's a lot of folks out there that are scared to do them, don't offer them because they don't know how to do them, believe that it comes along with some type of cloud over it, that you get labeled that type of lender. But I know you and I know the type of production you do, and that's not all you do. But you seem to be the person that everybody goes to for advice, for guidance, and things of that nature. So if you could start us off with just telling us a little bit about yourself, your experience in the industry, and then we'll jump into how you got into doing manufactured homes.
Sure. I've actually been in the mortgage industry for about 25 years now. I started off as a receptionist and kind of worked my way up. So this has been my one and only career.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. And then so I started doing manufactured home loans about 6 years ago. I had an agent call me and asked me if I did these loans. And I said, well, in my career so far, I've never had anybody ask me. So I said, let's figure it out. Let's do this together. And she was like, awesome.
That is awesome. So I think it kind of goes back to a concept I was talking about earlier today in our loan officer meeting, which our market with the lack of inventory, our shortage of inventory, we're starting to see more and more manufactured homes come about. One of the loan officers said they believe it's the new 150 to 300 price range.
It is.
And I don't believe that they're too far off by saying that. And then going a little bit further, we were talking about container homes and barn dominiums and things of that nature. And typically when you get the question in any type of social media group or something like that, most don't know how to do them. So they say they don't offer them. And really it has to do with the comps, which we'll get into that a little bit later. But I wanted to start with the basics of manufactured housing. What types of programs out there? Because keep in mind, this podcast is consumer driven, lender driven, and real estate driven. So we've got all those listeners out there wondering what the heck is all the fuss about with these manufactured housing?
Well, I would have to start off by saying that not all lenders or investors, if you will service these loans.
Mm-hmm.
And so FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, USDA will actually do all of these loans. However, there are some caveats to them where some will only do double and triple wides,
mm-hmm.
and some will only do single wides. And so it gets into a very small box, if you will, on who will service these.
Absolutely. And from what she's talking about, to kind of layman term it, we as lenders have plenty of different programs that we offer as a whole. But there are only so many investors that have an appetite for a select type of program. So in these cases, you've got maybe, let's say, out of 20 servicers or investors that a mortgage company will have, only 2 or 3 may offer a specific type of manufactured housing. And in those cases, you also have lenders that only have one investor that will take a single wide property, right?
Yes, that is correct. The amount of lenders who do the single wides are very, very limited. And so they're very few and far between.
and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that there weren't as many manufactured housing as we're seeing these days. So I don't know if the investors will open up a larger appetite for them as they realize that the property values of them aren't actually diminishing like we all anticipated they would do. They're actually increasing still.
Yes, that is correct. You know, there was several years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, Wells Fargo was one of the big ones that would service all of these manufactured homes. So they were kind of the key player in this market. Well, they pulled out. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of other big banks also pulled out at the same time. So now that this market has reopened and we're finding, yes, there are viable properties. They have land and they come with a couple acres, and it could be as small as just a lot size.
Sure.
But these, I guess you would say, the myth behind them was that they depreciate, these manufactured homes.
Huge myth. Absolutely.
And so that was a big thing for me, you know, when people wanted to go, oh, I wanted to look at a manufactured home, and the thing was like, oh no, it's going to depreciate in value. Well, that's not the case anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just your smaller loan amounts either. There are triple wides out there that are costing, $300,000 to $400,000.
You're exactly right.
And they're absolutely beautiful. And so that is a big misconception in this manufactured housing market.
Absolutely. So I guess bringing it back just to more of a foundation of it, and speaking of foundation, what constitutes a manufactured home? I mean, are we talking like your Palm Harbor homes, or give me some insight on that? What makes a manufactured home a manufactured home?
So a manufactured home is actually constructed in a factory, and it is put together in the factory. It is put on a trailer, so to speak, and it comes with a tongue and axle and everything. And it is moved onto the property and put on a permanent foundation.
Mm-hmm.
The permanent foundations, there's a big, huge misconception in the world about that as well, because some people think, oh, it's got to be on a concrete slab.
Right.
Well, that's not the case. So a permanent foundation is just where it's affixed and it's permanently there. It cannot be moved. The tongue and the axle and everything has to be removed. And it has to either be on a concrete foundation, or it can be on a tie-down system.
Okay.
That's approved by HUD. And there is an inspection that goes along with that to make sure that it is properly done and it meets all of those guidelines. And so if it's not, say, on a permanent foundation and or tie-down system correctly, you can get a company to come out and do what they call a retrofit, and it makes it a permanent foundation.
Absolutely.
And all the guidelines. So,
okay. No. And taking it back just a little bit more, you had mentioned that you had an agent that reached out to you about 6 years ago, and you guys dove into it together, and you more of the diving and them more of the standing back, hoping that this actually works.
Yes.
What led you to start doing more?
It was just an untapped market.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many people needing this type of financing, and they would go to all of these banks and everything, and they'd keep coming back saying, well, nobody does them. Nobody does them. So when I got with this one agent and she was doing a lot of rural properties, we just decided that this was a market that we wanted to kind of tap into together. And that increased her business and increased mine. And because nobody was doing them, I'm like, well, I guess I'll just have this as a niche market.
I'll just do all
I'll
of them.
do it.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I believe that we're seeing, you had mentioned that it was an untapped market. I believe it's still an untapped market.
Yes.
And I think that it's going to continue to grow. And for reasons that I had mentioned just before, which is the first time home buyers that we have out there and what we would typically see historically, you got a good job, good credit, you've saved for down payment, and it's time to buy that first home. They were typically buying anywhere from, 170 to, let's say, 300,000.
Yep.
But those price points are becoming extinct. They're moving up, and those are now becoming, unfindable type price points for these folks.
Yes.
I believe that as we shift, it's going to become more acceptable to have manufactured housing. And there's been plenty of manufactured homes that you would see and not even believe that they're manufactured homes.
Yes, that is correct. You would walk upon something and you would think, oh, this doesn't even look like it's a manufactured home.
Mm-hmm.
It looks just like your single family dwelling home. And they're great homes, especially for some home buyers, or especially for somebody who's just looking for a more rural property and wants to have acreage and start off their family with this type of home. So
absolutely. And as we jump further down this rabbit hole of manufactured housing, I want to dive into a couple of the loan programs specifically and see if anybody out there listening, whether it be a listing agent that has a listing that they think can only go cash or only conventional, I want to express some of the loan programs and their requirements. And when I say requirements, they're not all the same across the board, but still just to kind of give a foundation of that.
Yeah. So when I speak to an agent, or if I know of somebody that's going to have a listing, I always tell them, hey, give me a call. Let me look and do the research on the property. And they kind of look at me with deer in the headlights and they're like, what do you mean? So you have to, number one, make sure that the home has been constructed before June 15th, 1976.
Okay. And is this
after
Is
June.
this for a specific loan program or all the above?
Just in general.
Okay,
so
very good.
The home has to be built after June 15th, 1976. That's the first thing that we look at. And
Okay.
then the second thing is we have to make sure that the property has never been moved before.
Gotcha.
because like I said, it could potentially be moved and we want to make sure that it hasn't been. And there's actually a site that you have to utilize, which is TDHCA. I know we use a lot of acronyms in this business. So that is the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. And they have a record of everything that has ever been purchased. And you're supposed to, if you ever move it or once you purchase it, you're supposed to complete what's called a SOL, a statement of location, another acronym, with the TDHCA. And this is how they keep their books and their records. And so that's the second thing we do.
Okay.
And then, of course, looking to make sure that it's on a permanent foundation. And if it isn't, then we need to, or that listing agent might need to go to the seller and get proper documentation and say, hey, do you know if this has ever been retrofitted? And if they have no clue, then my recommendation is to go out and get a foundation engineer's report. There are companies out there that do it for a very nominal fee. Some are free, but of course they're wanting your business to try to retrofit it if it hasn't been. So those are the top 3 things that we have to look at. And then of course I do the same thing if I have a buyer that's wanting to purchase a manufactured home. I always recommend that the agent telling me what that property address is so I can do that research. So they're not putting a contract on something that can't be financed.
Right. And I think what I find in most cases, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it starts with the listing agent.
Yes.
And the homework and research that they do up front, which can allow or help the rest of that transaction go a bit smoother.
Absolutely. That is, if you've never done a manufactured home or taken a listing for one, you've got to do the research because it will completely tank a deal.
Sure.
For these new potential buyers coming in.
Could you give me some examples or things that you would tell a listing agent that would help them in regards to helping a transaction prior to accepting a contract? And then the second part to that would be, can you give us a time that they didn't do something that caused kind of a debacle, we'll call it?
Yes. So if you take on a listing and you do those top 3 things, that will make the transaction go as smoothly as possible. You also, if the seller is apt to, say, help get that transaction retrofitted prior to it going on the market, then that will make things go a lot smoother as well. And yes, I have had several that have said, yes, this is retrofitted. And we send the appraiser out and he's like questioning it. And we have to get a foundation report and then it has not been retrofitted. And so then we have to get a company to come out and retrofit it. And then what happens is, who's going to take on that expense? Is it going to be the buyer? Is it going to be the seller? Are they going to split the cost? So yes, that could make a huge wrench into things because they can cost anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000 to get this retrofitted. So if the buyer doesn't have that money, or the seller doesn't have the money to give up, so then you kind of get stuck. Who's going to pay for it? Right.
And I think in those cases, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, I feel it falls on the responsibility of the listing agent because they coached or encouraged their borrower or their seller to accept a contract on a financed deal.
Correct.
That being the case, they should be educated and educating their sellers on what it entails to accept a deal like this.
Yes. Because if when a listing agent puts in there, it's eligible for FHA, VA, conventional, et cetera, and it's not, let's say it's been moved before too. And the previous or the current owner didn't know that it had been moved before. That will also stop a deal. There are companies out there that will do a home loan for a property that's been moved before, but the interest rates are significantly higher.
Absolutely.
And the down payment requirements are much higher than it would be for, say, an FHA loan, which is only 3.5% down.
Absolutely. And as we move forward, I want to dive into the interest rate and down payment discussion a little bit later in this. But before we do, I wanted to ask tags. They talk about the actual manufactured home having tags, and I know what it means, but I'm going to act like the dummy here.
Yes.
And if you could just kind of enlighten us on that, because that word's thrown around and listing agents still don't understand it. Buyer's agents don't understand it. And there's some lenders out there that just regurgitate what they're being told to get.
Right. So that's another big piece is When you're taking on a listing or you're taking a buyer to look at a property, there is called the HUD certification label. It is a metal plate that is on the exterior of the home. And so if it's a double wide, there's going to be 2 metal plates and it has a serial number basically.
Mm-hmm.
And these are also registered within TDHCA, the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. If those are not present, then we have to go find them,
Mm-hmm.
which takes us to another third party where we have to go and do that research and order, the HUD data plate. There's another documentation that's also included inside the home, which is the HUD certificate. There's another certification that's actually a piece of paper,
Mm-hmm.
and it is always located somewhere inside the house, say like the utility room or under the kitchen sink. Sometimes it's not there.
Right.
Same thing. We got to go do the research and we got to order that and make sure that it is present. And what that's doing is just certifying that it has not, been moved several times
Sure.
from other properties, and also is just logged into the TDHCA's website.
Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. And just quickly before we move on, do you know how, or a simple way for those out there doing these loans or about to partake in a contract with these, how do they find out if it has been moved or not?
So going to the TDHCA website,
Okay.
there is, and it's kind of tricky, you have to kind of know how to finagle their system a little bit, but knowing who the current owner is, you can most of the time find it that way. Plugging in the address is another way, but sometimes you have to really kind of dig because it doesn't come up sometimes really simply in their
Sure.
system. But by doing that, and it's a public website, so anybody can do it. Just going in there and doing that research to find out, and it'll show where like it's currently installed in the county. And if you see that there's a different county listed on that documentation, that's your first red flag that,
Right.
it may have been moved from a different place
And
before.
then the folks that moved it didn't register it
Correct.
or update it with the database.
Yes, that is correct.
How do you keep track of all this? Do you have a checklist or something like that you guys go through?
I used to. I kind of have it all down in my head now.
That's awesome. So for those listening that are interested in partaking in this, educating themselves a little bit more about it, I'm going to actually put some of these key factors within the body of the description of this, just so you guys can go back and check references for that, because you never know. And as we move forward, I want to get into the rate discussion. I want to get into the down payment discussion because there are different programs that require different things. And I think it's best if we show them, I guess, what types of things they're up against, if that makes sense.
Sure. So we follow all guidelines. Just so FHA's minimum down payment requirement is 3.5%. Conventional is 5%. VA, it's 100% financing. You can do a USDA loan, and this is where it gets a little tricky when you're talking about financing. USDA is 100% financing as well. However, on a USDA loan, the home has to be built after January 2006. So I know we talked about, some manufactured homes, needing to be built after 1976. But for USDA, they actually did a pilot program several years ago to where it would allow you to finance an existing home.
Okay.
Previously, before this pilot program came out, it was only allowed for brand new construction USDA. And so if it's a newer home built after 2006, this allows these people, it just opens us up, especially because you've got a lot of rural properties that are going to have manufactured homes on them.
Absolutely.
And so it's 100% financing. Why would you not try to get your borrower or your client into this type of product?
I agree. At least give them the option.
Absolutely.
Especially in times that we're in at the moment where everybody's multiple offers, buyers are getting discouraged because they're getting beat out in certain price points.
Yes.
If you educated yourself just a tad bit more, both on the buyer's agent side, lending side, their partners, et cetera, it'd be able to open the door up to something that, as we know, first-time home buyers, we'd like to think it's our forever home, but chances are statistics show that it's 3 to 5
Yeah.
years. That's just the time frame. And also, to add to that, we have been seeing quite a bit of the opposite of what we thought was going to happen, which is these manufactured homes are losing their values. They're actually holding firm and growing with everybody else.
They are. Absolutely.
Yeah. So in regards to, we talked about FHA and the minimum requirements for that. Does it change in regards to single wide, double wide? obviously triple wide, that's like a regular house almost, right?
They're huge.
I would imagine. So with single wide, I know there are, I guess, an even finer or
smaller
box
Yes.
that of lenders that actually do them, and then an even smaller box of investors that will actually take them.
Yes.
So, for example, with a single wide, what would be the difference there on an FHA conventional type loan?
So your down payments are going to be the same, but
Okay.
where you start to run into the differences is going to be your interest rates. Investors, they do consider this a little bit more of a riskier product. And so the interest rate is going to be a little bit higher. There are going to be some adjustments for it. Single wides, yes, they're going to have a little bit more of an adjustment as well. Once again, because it's a little bit riskier of a property because they're smaller, so to speak. There's square footage requirements on all of these as well. So we have to kind of monitor that. I don't think that there's anything out there that's less than 400 square feet. So
The outhouse
we're pretty good there. Yeah.
Yep. The she shed.
Yes, the she shed. So we're good there. But as far as interest rates, I mean, yes, they may be a little bit higher, but if it's financeable through any of these sources and not through somebody else, I don't know if you want to mention names, but
No, it's okay. It is. And I think as we dive into that rate discussion, it makes sense. These are bigger risk type loans.
Yes.
Because of perception and the way they've gone, there hasn't been a ton of them, or else everybody would offer this type program.
Right.
So it does come with an additional layer of risk. You are anticipating to pay a little bit to even lock in an interest rate in most cases, even with a 700 plus credit score.
Yes.
That's better than not being able to finance it at all because A, B, and C lender don't offer it at all.
Right.
You know?
These other lenders, I mean, they're offering rates 7, 8, 9, 10%. And
yeah,
that's just crazy to me.
I agree.
I mean, if 4% is good, then, it's better than 8.
I agree. No, and I was talking about that earlier this morning, is we had, I guess, 2 or 3 situations where folks were refinancing and pulling cash out of their manufactured home to where we only had 1-2 investors tops to do it. And the rate was, I think, 4.5% back when we were in the low 3s or mid 3s. And it actually cost them money to get it. But then the loan officer comes to me and she's like, well, what the heck do I tell them? I said, you tell them the truth. But first, let's take a snapshot of their current situation. She pulls up the mortgage statement and it's 9% interest rate.
Yeah.
So anything
So
is
much
better
better
than what you got now, in addition to you're about to take cash out of a property that we all thought was going to deplete naturally.
Yep.
Absolutely. So again, it just opens the doors to that. And there's another thing that I just recently learned about the conventional loan on a single wide. It is tough to find mortgage insurance on these. The single wide, if you've got a company for it, by all means, let us know. But on our end, we had to have that borrower put 20% down if they were going to go conventional, simply because we could not find a mortgage insurance company that would support it.
Yes. I think we have one off the top of my mind that actually will do it. But yes, the mortgage insurance on a conventional product is a lot higher, just because, again, they're deeming it as a riskier loan product. Mm-hmm. So you may have to put, instead of 5% down on a conventional, you might have to do 10%. And it also goes back to looking at what that credit score is as well. Score requirements on that conventional loan are a little bit more stricter, if you will. I think everybody requires, I think it's 640 on those, but yeah, I mean, it can get, but at the same time, if a conventional product isn't the best for them, then we can also look at doing an FHA.
Right.
It just depends on that person's situation.
That makes sense. And the goal, go ahead.
I did want to add one thing in because it just came to the top of my mind, is,
it's all about you.
Is the manufactured homes, they want them to be all primary residents also. So there aren't any lenders out there that I know of that will do an investment property. So some people think, I want to go buy a whole bunch of manufactured homes, and classify them as investment properties. I don't know of anybody who will do that. So they're trying to just keep this more towards the primary residents.
And why do you think that is? It's a good topic for just a discussion and getting opinions out of the way.
I really don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know why
I think as an investor personally, it does carry a second set of risk. You've got the investor, now a landlord, renting to folks that typically are rural type properties. You're out in the sticks.
Can't
for the
be
most part,
managed.
right? Tough to manage.
Yeah.
And I guess the concept behind it is if they go in and tear it up, you might as well get a new one or something like that.
And that's possible, because the lender is lending on the collateral,
Mhm.
which the collateral is the home. And so just like you said, they may think something's going to happen to it and it's not going to be taken care of as it would be as if it was somebody's primary residence.
Sure. No, and it makes perfect sense. And I wanted to this is a poking fun, but someone asked, why does it have to be fixed to the foundation or to the ground in some way, shape, or form for it to become real property? Why can't we finance it if they promise they're not going to move it or anything like that?
Yeah, well, you're moving somebody's collateral.
That's exactly right.
Off the property.
That's exactly right. Time to go and foreclose, and all of a sudden,
There's
they're no
nothing
longer
there.
Texas residents. Yeah, that whole thing and their family are moving to Florida.
That's right.
That's a tough one. So since we are on the topic of different programs with that, I wanted to touch on the down payment assistance that folks are asking about
Sure.
in regards to these types of homes.
Down payment assistance is actually available on the manufactured housing. So once you combine that, these people could possibly be getting in with little to no money for first or second home.
Yeah. And it's important that we make sure that it is primary and second home, not the investment. We talked about that, but I want to make sure that we are very clear on that. It is intended for primary residence.
Yes.
Because of the risk factor.
Yeah.
And the high rates that we're talking about, I could only imagine what they would be if it was an investor. And I'm not saying that you can't go and do that, but it probably will be some type of private money or a local credit union or farm bureau credit union that you're still probably going to get high rates on.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. But yeah, I just closed a deal not too long ago that the only way for us to get these people into their home was to actually take it with down payment assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't remember the case, but I think it was because FHA, the rate was actually higher.
Yeah.
And then if I took it down payment assistance, which they needed it anyways, the rate was, about the same. So it was a win-win for these people.
Absolutely. And I want to kind of tie what we talked about in the beginning to something that a lot of folks have, I guess, an unclear certainty of how it goes, which is if you're not doing those things up front, the next time that we have an opportunity to catch that as lenders is at the time of appraisal.
Yes.
And at that time, it's typically too late for anyone to back out because they've already spent money into this transaction. What are you seeing in regards to when the appraisal comes in? Are you seeing them meet value? Are you seeing any, let's call it repairs or adjustments needing to be made? What's that like?
I have seen a few come in a little bit shy of making value, but they're few and far between because there are comps out there to support most of these deals. As far as if it does come back with lender required repairs, some of it may be your typical wood rot or the siding or the skirting around the home was deficient and it just needed a simple replacement, which was very nominal cost. Those are kind of the typical things. Another thing I see a lot is stair rails.
Okay.
Most of these homes are going to consist of having, 2 or 3 steps up to the front or back porch.
On the exterior.
Mm-hmm. And FHA requires this to be installed, obviously for safety reasons. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people the home buyer will just go and install it, or they'll buy something, and they'll get it up. And there we are. We've satisfied our lender required repair and we're moving on down the road.
There you go. No, that makes great sense. So in those scenarios, do you see, and it typically doesn't come up front because the idea behind why it happens is more times than not hidden from us, which is you've got a buyer that has a manufactured home sitting out on land and their goal is to knock it down and build their own home. But the land and the home is basically the same price as just the land.
Yeah. If the home is not livable, then we're not going to be able to finance it. And so I know a lot of people are saying, okay, we don't care about the home. We just want the land.
And that's what we hear quite
all the
often.
time.
Absolutely.
All the time. And so the idea is good because they're just wanting to secure the land. Well, at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to finance it because there is this structure that may not be inhabitable or it is inhabitable. And their end goal, yes, is to tear it down. But so they're basically going to have to find a different kind of, say, a hard money source that doesn't care, or they don't, care about the inspection of the home. or they just have to pay cash for it.
Yeah, they just have to pay cash. That's exactly right. And that's kind of what we're seeing with container homes and the barn dominiums is you've got the question of, hey, do you guys do these? The answer is yes, we all do them, but is the comps there to support it? Because most cases, kind of like with this, most are paid for in cash and most aren't listed on the MLS system. So therefore, there's no comp for it. And then when they go to sell it and they're the first one within their area that's doing so, they run into those same issues of it has nothing to do with we can or can't do it. It's where do we get the comp from?
Right. To support the value.
Absolutely. And then I wanted to, since we were talking about the appraisals, have you ever had a situation, because I've actually had this happen, to where you have a borrower that is purchasing a home, single family on land, and there is a single family manufactured home or double wide there on the property, and they want to parcel that out and sell it separately?
I think you would have to parcel it out prior to, because once again, your appraised value is going to be on that collateral.
Right.
You know, there is, however, there is one program that will allow for a second manufactured home on the property, as long as it is inferior to the primary residence. So let's say the main home is going to be 2,000 square feet that you're going to live in, but there is a second manufactured home in the back. You know, even though it's on the same parcel, it's got to be smaller, and they will actually consider you and let you keep that.
I'm learning this. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's kind of a new one for me too.
Okay. Yeah, no. And I think just to kind of sum that up, if there is a property that has a manufactured home on it, and then a second, the one that you are actually purchasing that the value is based on has to be superior to the other in some way, shape, or form, in way of value, I would imagine.
Yes.
I would imagine that the idea behind that is they're probably going to sell the other one, take the other one, move it. Who knows?
It could be, yeah. But if there is two on the property and the one that you're not going to live in, we can close on the deal. Well, the home would actually have to be moved prior to closing.
Gotcha.
But we can go through the whole process, you know, and right before we close, we have to prove that that second home or that second manufactured home has been removed from the property. We can totally do that. So
Okay. And I guess we talked about retrofitting a while back. Do you know the different? I mean, for example, does a pier and beam work just the same as retrofitting that property, or does it need to be affixed totally to the actual ground?
Well, so you've got pier and beam, but it may also need to be tied down. And I'm doing air quotes, tied down, you know, because it will also have to have that like cabling system underneath it.
Okay.
So I'm not a expert on that as far as, and so I always rely on my companies that I built a relationship with. And so I always call them and say, hey, I've got a property. Can you run out there and look at it? And they'll run out and they'll say, yes, absolutely. It's either tied down or it's not. And at the same time, they'll actually give me a quote if it's not. And so, which is amazing because you don't want to have to call like 4 or 5 different people. And there's a handful of people out there that do this. I've just aligned myself with this one company just because they're always on top of their game. They refer me out because they know I do manufactured home loans. And so it's kind of a reciprocal relationship.
100%. I think that's important as a key factor for this episode and any episode, essentially, is if you're going to dive into a niche type market, you need to assemble your crew, as they would say in Anchorman.
Yeah. And so I have 2 people that I know I can always call on to say, you know, or if I know it's retrofitted, but for some reason we need to get a foundation inspection report, I can call him and he's like, yep, I'm on it, you know, and he'll go anywhere pretty much in the San Antonio and surrounding areas. So having that group together, knowing that when I call, they're like, yes, we'll do it, you know, makes it a whole lot easier for the process, not only just for me and my buyer and my agents, but even if a listing agent needs help, I am here to help them just so they can inform themselves. And so the next deal that they have will go a little bit smoother, you know?
No, that makes great sense. So if you had advice to give to, let's say, a veteran buyer or a listing agent that is accepting a veteran contract, is there anything different that they need to know about? Because I know the VA program is one that there's a lot of folks out there that don't want to accept offers because they think there's separate nuances too that they're going to have to overcome in way of hurdles. But from I'm sure you've done a VA manufactured home. What was there anything different? Did you equip anybody prior to?
No, there's really not anything different than purchasing a single family dwelling. The process is the same. The down payment is the same.
Mm-hmm.
The inspections are the same. Once again, we have to just make sure it's never been moved and all that.
Sure.
But I'm going to throw you a curveball here.
Okay, bring it. I'll lean into it.
We actually have one investor, that we do business with that will actually let the home have been moved once before.
Oh, wow.
And it's only for a VA loan.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to write that down now so I can tell my crew about it. But that, again, all of these things that we're talking about are ways that folks out there that are scratching their head going, where the heck do I get business from? And not just here in Texas. This is a national thing.
Yes.
These are ways to get creative. And it's not necessarily being creative because they're not reinventing the wheel. They're just getting into something that they thought was tough, kind of like a 203K that we're all fearful of until you do one or two. And then it's like, okay, this is not a big deal. I can actually use this to leverage and market and create other opportunities for most buyers, listing agents, because some don't accept contracts on homes like that.
You're right. And I think that it's a shame because just because they don't want to take the listing, on this particular type of home, it doesn't mean it's not a viable or valuable as the rest. That's kind of how I aligned myself. And I wanted to, make this kind of a niche that I focused on because it needed to be serviced.
I agree 100%.
There's so many people out there that are, they don't need to go pay 8 or 9%. They don't need to pay that 10 or 20% down when they can actually get approved for this particular loan type.
Right. And I think this is something that each episode seems to be more and more relevant, which is not all lenders are created equal. So if somebody's telling you no, get a second opinion.
That's right.
Definitely do your research. I think that we as consumers are becoming more adaptive to the information that we're being given, but we still have a little bit too much faith in I'm not going to say professional. It's more so the newer to the business that are, instead of telling you the truth about these programs or telling you to do your research, they're just saying no.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm a big proponent of education, not just furthering my own education, but for other loan officers and other realtors. And why not share the knowledge? Why not share everything, just so that can be available to everybody because it needs to be shared.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
So there was something that I had mentioned. I read it yesterday and I started doing these daily mortgage updates and I've been consistent with it. So yesterday I read a very fun insight to something which essentially said in the last 2 years, agents that have less than 2 years experience made an average of $10,000 total. And that blew my mind because you see all these things on social media about people posting and closing all over the place left and right. When in speaking to those agents directly, these are the type of programs, this is the type of education that you can take and actually go and apply if you have the fire under your butt to succeed. I mean,
absolutely.
Truly,
Yeah.
So that being said, we're doing great on time. Let's see, we've gone over the types of programs. We've gone over the requirements for most of them. We have talked about down payment assistance with it. We've talked about the requirements on the actual property itself. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's one more other thing I want to throw out.
Bring it. You know what? This is something I really want to learn about. I hear there's a one-time close for this stuff.
There is.
Oh my gosh, we might have broken the internet.
Yes. So there's actually, our company, Directions Home Loan, actually offers a one-time close on manufactured homes.
What?
Yes.
And believe it or not, I work with Directions Home Loan and did not even know this. And I love doing this because I get to educate myself that I can then take back and educate the loan officer. So please take us through the, summary of what a one-time close is and how it can be applied to our topic here.
Sure. So a one-time close is when you have, say, a lot contract to purchase a piece of land and you want to maybe install a manufactured home on it. So we take, and this could apply to whether you either own the land already or you're purchasing it at the same time. So what we do is we take the lot contract and the construction contract with say it's Palm Harbor or whoever it is.
That's what I was going to say. Does this apply to a Palm Harbor?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
very
So
cool.
any new, it has to be new construction, not an older manufactured home or anything.
Sure.
So we take those two contracts and we marry them together. And so we're actually closing the transaction up front and we're locking in that interest rate. And then the home will actually can be installed along with if it needs a septic or a water well or anything like that. And we offer these on VA and FHA.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about the floodgates.
Yeah.
Now that they know, and I was talking about that earlier, but it just didn't make sense because I didn't see that there was an option for that. So I did tell them, I said, guys, if that was the case, I'd have you all posted up at Palm Harbor because that's exactly what's going on. But truly, I think that's an untapped market that regardless of the information that you're providing, and this is just something that we've tested and data shows and statistics show that no matter what, you're still only going to have about 1% that actually take the information that we're giving and actually go apply it.
Yes.
So I think that also helps me be super transparent with the information so that it is unbiased education. And I believe you're doing the same thing here. So with those, I mean, why haven't you just blown it up with that? Are you ready to do so?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. I'd love to help you with that, truly.
Yeah.
Because there's a plenty of opportunity with it. I've got a lot of newer loan officers in the business, and I'm not going to say that I'm not going to entrust in them to do that, but I'd rather learn from the expert.
Well, and if they want to get into it, that's great. If they don't, at least if something comes across their desk,
right,
they need to be able to approach it with just a little bit of knowledge to say, yes, let me look into this and know how to look into it and at least get them from point A to point B.
Right. And instead of saying, no, we don't offer it,
right,
giving them the tidbits of what they do know. And if they want to learn more information, then, hey, I'll get back to you with the remainder of this information, not BSing them to the point that you're swaying them to not go that route because it's not best for you and what you know at this point.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, just put the effort in. I mean, and then the knowledge, it's there. You have to just do a little bit of the research and figure it out. But it's a very great program, and I'm happy to be able to offer it. And my name has actually made it all the way up to North Texas, and I have no idea how.
I love it. And you're licensed in Texas?
Yes, just in Texas.
So. And how would somebody get a hold of you if they were to get a hold of you or want to learn more information about it or apply or see if something needs to check right or anything like that? How would somebody get a hold of you?
Sure. I can be reached by email or my cell phone. My cell is 210-683-8432.
Holy cow, that's really close to mine.
Yeah, it is.
Really close. And I'll make sure to put all this stuff in the descriptions. But is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners, both from a buyer's perspective, a seller's perspective, or a buyer's agent perspective?
I mean, if anybody just needs any additional information and they're just curious and they have questions, I'm here. That's, like I said, I'm here to educate, not just myself, my other fellow colleagues, but anybody who is wanting to learn a little bit more about this product.
That's awesome. So before we close, I want to go over a couple of key factors that I pulled from this episode. There are 3 things that we need to search for when dealing with manufactured housing. First, it needs to be built after 1976.
Yes.
And then it needs to be permanently fixed to the land and converted to real property if it's not already, right?
Correct.
And it must have an engineer's report. And to go with that, it has to have the proper tags.
Correct.
And if it has been moved, that's okay. It can only have been
for
once.
VA.
Yeah, only for VA. If you're a VA buyer.
Yes.
Just for clarification on that. Let's see here. There are places that you can do your homework prior to make sure that it has or has not been moved. But I think the whole idea of this is to help everyone within the industry at the same time. If the seller is more equipped to handle the questions that their sellers have, the buyer is equipped to handle the questions that their buyer may have when dealing with these types of transactions. And then if the lender knows exactly where to look, they shouldn't be scared to move forward with this type of thing. It's a little better when you've got a support system behind you, but go forth and prosper, right?
I agree. Yep.
Well, guys, if you got something out of this episode, please like, share, and tell a friend. By all means, we're trying to grow this thing through osmosis, and we're taking it national here in April when the new version of ReviewMyMortgage.com launches. But until then, I'm your host, Mark Jones, and this is Key Factors Podcast, sponsored by ReviewMyMortgage.com, the largest index of mortgage programs nationally, and we will catch you on the next one.